Hit it, Justin.
All right. Hey, welcome. My name is Justin Davis.
I'm Greg Ross Monroe, and today we're going to be talking about how to improve your service business efficiency and maybe even your differentiation running a service business using technology.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
But
right.
first,
Before
I
we
gotta
get
ask...
to that, though,
Oh yeah, okay, here we go.
first things first.
What are you drinking, Justin?
Here, what are you drinking? That's right. I am. I'm gonna stay with the Florida theme today and go with this Island Life Key West
Ooh.
lager from the Waterfront Brewery in Key West. I've been to this brewery. It's right there on the harbor in Key West. It's a beautiful place. It's a huge place. If it's still around,
We should do a podcast from there. I think that
I love
sounds
that.
like Go
You guys
actually
are
do it at the
listening.
breweries.
You're tuning in from the Waterfront Brewery in Key West. Reach out for an on-site appearance.
I am drinking everyone's favorite Belgian ale, a blonde Belgian, the Leffe. Put it in this little glass over here, and this is actually my wife's beer that I have stolen out of her collection because it looked delicious. Don't tell her. She doesn't listen to this.
I mean, it's one of the legendary beers out there. So Greg, today what we're going to talk about here on
Justin,
the
what are we
podcast
going to
is
talk about?
we're going to talk about how to improve your bottom line by working on your service business, on improving some efficiency and processes and things like that. And I want to start this conversation in this way, right? If you're listening to this, you have a service business, whether or not you are a lawn care company, you are a graphic design company, whatever you do, increasing your top line, your revenue every year, which I'm sure if you're the CEO listening, you are working on that goal every year, increasing your top line. That's a hard thing to do. Marketing is tough. Demand generation is tough. It's hard to do that. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is make our businesses spin off more cash. And there are two pieces to the balance sheet. There's revenue and there's also cost. And so even if you find it hard to move the needle on revenue, you can move the needle on cost and still put yourself in a really, really great position. And one of the best ways to do that is to use technology to reduce your cost.
Yep, 100%. And
so that's what we're going to talk about today. Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, no, I mean, the other thing is speed, right? You're always, what is it you always say? It's not the cheapest that wins, it's the fastest who wins.
Fast wins. Yeah, absolutely. Fast always wins. Speed always wins. And there's a book that I have called "It's not the big that eat the small, it's the fast that eat the slow." Jason Jennings, I think. Maybe that's not the correct name. I can't remember. Either way, this has been a philosophy of mine for a long time, which is that speed ultimately wins almost all of the time, given a certain tolerance for quality. Now, if you're going fast and churning out stuff, then no, of course, speed does not win at all costs. But given a certain tolerance of quality, speed will win in the market.
Yeah. So, talk to me. Like, let me before we go on. How is when you say speed? Do you mean like if I have a lawn care company or a disaster recovery? I have a disaster recovery company, and near and dear to our heart, we have a big disaster recovery client. And, they're sending out teams to do cleanup field teams out in the middle of nowhere after a hurricane or a fire, cut down trees that fall on power lines, clean debris off interstate roads and things like that. Are you saying that technology can make those crews work faster, or are you saying something else about speed? Let's define that first.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. And I think you can actually break this down into several different areas, right? The crews that are out there on the road picking up stuff, you can actually make their job faster with technology to an extent. Now, to some extent, you can't. There is a ceiling to that, right? I mean, like if you're mowing lawns, you can only get a mower to go so fast. I mean, like they can't go at 1,000 miles an hour for the laws of physics, right? So there is a cap to some of that, right? But there are also, if you start to look at the process of delivering that service, there are other pieces to it. Onboarding the client, all of these other things, the payment processes, the logging, the accounting, the all of the back office stuff that goes around supporting the fulfillment of that thing, supporting the people who are picking up the stuff or mowing the lawns. Those things can be sped up drastically, which allows you to get into a job and out of a job faster. So even if the job doesn't speed up itself, and you can actually speed up the job too, you can speed up the things on the ends and inside of the job, the back office work, which will make the job go faster. And then you can fit more jobs into a day, and more jobs into a day is better, is more top line revenue ultimately.
100%. I mean, if you can even speed up the quoting process, you're going to win more jobs, right? I saw a thing that said, Service Titan said that companies that when they increase the speed of a quote by 3x, they closed 4 times as many deals as their competitors. I saw that if you were from another Service Titan thing that I read was that service companies that digitize field workflows, so like, you're scanning the truck with a QR code before you put the debris pile in. You have got an automated checklist of like, who's getting what equipment to go out there. Those kind of things. They will cut billing cycles down by 50 to 80% time. So you have more cash coming in the door. Imagine if you got paid 80% quicker, and your back office staff were able to do 50% more work. And then the real-time data stuff also saves you money, right? Like TDR Logistics, a company that is a transportation firm, I read that they cut their operating costs by 20%, by integrating their fleet data into live dashboards, so they could see where the vehicles were. They could do better route planning. They could see if there were employees that were doing things that weren't exactly great. They had so much more visibility into their work that they were able to like increase their margins by 20%. So
which is
these are crazy numbers.
Yeah,
crazy numbers.
Yeah, absolutely wild numbers. And it's definitely very possible to get those kind of increases. And it doesn't, and look, sometimes this isn't the sexiest stuff, right? This is back of house automation. This is like in the guts of the business process stuff, but it can really have a really big impact on what you do. And like going back to, it's not just, it's kind of obvious things like, well, if we automate customer service, that would obviously help us, right? Some things are quite obvious, but what you're talking about, like data reporting, for example, one thing that might not be immediately obvious to people is that speed of fulfillment and delivery is one aspect of how speed helps you in the market, but also speed of decision making is another really important speed lever in any business. Because the cycles, right? Like when you go into business, you're going into like, effectively, you're going into like a war. Forgive the analogy here, but the situation is changing every day, and you have to adapt to the market and figure out what's working. And sometimes you have to retreat back. Sometimes you can go attack the market on these lines. And the faster that you're getting intel in, knowing what's happening with the market, what's happening with your business, the faster you can navigate through that without sort of wasting time in the wrong direction. And remember, every hour that the business is running, the business is eating money. So the faster that you can make those decisions, the less of that money you burn on wrong direction. And that's why things like automating data intelligence and reporting and things like that is also a massive advantage for even service companies like this.
Yeah. One of the first questions I see clients come in and ask themselves is like, how do I even know if I'm like losing money on this thing, right? Like, especially things like paper processes. And I don't mean they might not necessarily be paper, like literal paper processes, but I think you know what I mean, right? Like you got to have a checklist, or like the piece of equipment has to be approved, and like, or maintenance schedules, or something like that. Any time that you have a paper process, anytime you got a paper process that is not being tracked or can't be audited, or it's going to disappear one day, is going to cause you slowdowns every step of the way. Maybe not just today, but when you have a dispute over an invoice, when you have a piece of equipment that goes missing, when you have a performance evaluation where you got to go and dig up in the data in the past. If you have that data immediately available to you, you're going to be able to do your job quicker. And efficiency isn't about doing the same work faster necessarily all the time. It's really about like freeing up resources and people to do more high value work.
Yeah.
And that's where I think where you can get these efficiencies. But some of it is different, right? Some of it's being able to do things that you just couldn't do before. Right? I'll give you an example. We have the customer in disaster recovery. They're out in the field, and they might be being paid by city, state government, county government, FEMA, who knows? So it's federal. And where they go and like pick up these debris piles, they would pull out a map and they would have a highlight. They would highlight which roads were under their contract, because maybe a private road is not under the FEMA contract to go pick up some debris, right? Now the guys out in the field, they open up their app and it has the same map. So what's different? Well, there's a couple of things that are different. The cognitive load, because the app just tells you that you're not supposed to be on that road, right? And it is accurate within like 5 feet to something crazy. So there's less cognitive load, so I don't have to like worry about that. The amount of mistakes that are made have basically disappeared, because you can't even like log a debris pickup pile without using the app. Whereas with the map, you might be like, okay, I think this is the right road, and you've gone and done like half a day's work on something you're not going to get paid for. So just that one small tiny thing of using technology to like show exactly where you're supposed to be doing the work has like been a game changer for them. The amount of like error rate has like gone basically down to zero.
Yeah, error reduction is a huge thing, right? Like errors cost your business money. I mean, when you have to redo work, or you have to take things back, or you have to have a conversation with somebody about whether something is correct or not, that is time. And as the clock is moving, it's burning fuel, and fuel's expressed in dollars. And so every one of those cycles, so if you can reduce those errors, you get rid of those cycles, and you get to use that fuel and burn that fuel on something else. And one thing I will say is that, it's easy to listen to this stuff. It's easy to look at your business and say, well, I know, but like the place where we end up spending so much time is we have these documents, and we really need like a human to read them. And I don't think that is something that we can automate. It's just impossible. We just can't do that. So this is nice and all, but like our business is different. But Greg, I mean, things have changed recently. I would say there's a lot less that's impossible now than used to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know you're trying to talk about AI, but before we dive into AI, I'll give you an example of something that you couldn't do even 2 years ago, right? No. We have a client who does asphalt repair. Right? They've got these cool trucks, and they heat up the asphalt, and they go and like fill in cracks and holes and stuff. One of the things that you have to do if you want to call them is either you got to send a salesperson out there to measure like the hole to be able to know how much asphalt you got to have, or you've got to like go and map, and maybe there's a whole bunch of them, so you got to go map them out, or you got to like call up the property manager or whatever and ask them to go and do it. But like this iPhone 16, whatever it is, 17 Pro, whatever Max, it has LiDAR. That is a technology that basically uses like invisible lasers that bounce signals back, kind of like how a bat sees the world. And you can build an app in this thing, right? That you can point it at a hole in the ground and hit a button, and it will measure the inside of that. So imagine what we do now is we give the app to the property managers or whoever, city, state, whatever is going to go needs these holes fixed. And they just say, oh, there's a hole right there. I'm going to open up the app. I'm going to go scan it. I scan all the holes. It gives me an instant quote because it knows all the math to do that in the background. It knows who I am because I've downloaded the app. I filled it out, so I don't have to go fill out some new requisition order. I hit the button. I say like, yeah, I approve the quote. I'm not on the phone. I haven't harassed the back of the house staff. I haven't had to ask any questions. It guides me through it. Nobody has to go out there and measure the holes. I know exactly how much asphalt I have to like pack in. I can do this with measuring trucks. I can do it with like, basically everything. And now, once we've got this stuff, once you have that concept, you can now extend that with your AI stuff, right? Mm-hmm. You can take just a photo of something and say, here's an interesting example. Like you can, on the back of a truck to fix a certain thing, and I can't talk too much about this because this is actively being worked on. There are these government-ish style regulations. I can't talk about this too much, but there's a type of work that you need to do where you need to send field crews out to do it. And the materials that you use are all billable at different rates. Right. And there's a lot of stuff on the back of this truck because they do like 20 different types of jobs. Mm-hmm. But one thing that's cool is you take out all the kind of stuff you need to fix this particular type of problem as you find it. You lay all the stuff out on the ground, and instead of going through a checklist and filling it out, which takes like 45 minutes sometimes because there's so many pieces, we know what all those things are. You take a simple photo of it. We've trained a special little type of generative AI to look at that picture. It knows what all the equipment is, and it instantly goes and fills out the list. The human being still goes and checks and says like, hey, is this right? But you know how much time we have saved? We took one photo and it filled out like 45 pieces of equipment in a checklist, which immediately goes back into the billing cycle. Yeah, I know you're Mr. Gen AI, so
I'm actually, you know what? I'm actually not going to go down the AI trend. Now, I agree. Yes, I think there's a lot more that can be done now because of LLMs and the recent advances in AI. But even, I think a lot of it is, as a service business, as any business, but a service business certainly, it's easy to, it's hard to see your business through another lens. It's hard to look at your processes and say like, oh, that can be.
Trust me.
Because a lot of people might not know. Oh, we could take a picture of that and do that, right? Or a lot of people might not know, oh, what if we put an app in people's hands and just tell them if they're picking up the right thing? And like sometimes we encounter people who go, oh, we could do that? And it's like, yeah, actually that's relatively straightforward stuff with GPS and existing technology been around. But because you as a service company, your business is not to be in technology and to build that every day. So there may be all kinds of capabilities that you don't know about. And so my recommendation would be like, think of anything you could possibly want to automate and go ask somebody like us or whatever and say like, could we do that? Like, is that a possibility? How could we do that? And ideate with technology professionals who can go, yes, actually, there's this specific kind of thing. You could use this thing. You could use this thing. And we could put these together to do this really awesome thing. But, our job is so fun because we get to be in partnership with companies like this every day, just spending time thinking about these problems, going, okay, well, let's think, what are all the colors on the palette that we have technology wise, and how can we put them together to make an interesting solution for this thing? And so a lot more is possible, even without AI, but especially now with AI, so much more is possible than you think. I would in fact default to say, it's more likely it can be solved with technology than cannot.
Yeah, I mean, we were brought in a few years ago to look at do you know about like trash valet companies? You live in a big apartment complex. They come and you got your trash can outside of your house. They take the trash and they take it to the dumpster or whatever happens to trash. I'm sorry, I'm a software engineer, not an expert in trash. I know about a different type of garbage collection. That is a memory management joke for the nerds out there. Anyway, so they came in to talk to us and they said, we wanted to. Their initial problem was some of their crews would check in on their timesheets before they got to the job site, right? Whatever, it's cool. These guys were doing various things. They just wanted to solve that problem. So they wanted to build a GPS-powered check-in tool. Like, I can only check in when I get to the community or like when I'm through the gate or whatever the rules were. And we started like, asking them what are the other problems that they had. And one of the problems was timesheets, because all the timesheets had to be collated. Well, we've already got that. So now we've already got the data from the check-in. No problem. All right, well, cool. What's your biggest cost? Well, gas and, gas is a big cost. And payroll. Okay, well, we can't really help payroll, but let's look at your routing. Is it the most efficient routing? Let's build that into the system. Cool, because we already know where you've got to be. We know what the mileage is of the trucks. We can automate and we can kind of like calculate the most efficient routes. Okay, cool. Let's add that in. And then that led to, well, one of the other problems is that the back of the house staff are constantly dealing with violations. Like, you got to fine somebody in the apartment, or you got to like give them a warning if they didn't put their trash in the right thing, or they put something that's not supposed to go in their trash box in the trash box. But like, how do you do that? Like, well, you'd have to take a photo, and then we have to email it back to home base, and then home base would have to send that to the property manager to confirm that. No, so the check-in app then had a photo where you take a photo of the violation. It automatically goes to the back of the house. Somebody just says, yep, violation, and that automatically gets sent to now the property management portal, right? So you build these things on bit by bit by bit by bit, and all of a sudden you've reduced all the time that the people actually doing the trash service have to worry about. You've reduced error rates from overpayment or fraud or theft from check-in. You have reduced all the back office staff time from handling these kind of fine situations. You're making much more money now because the property managers have more insight into actually what is a real violation. And you've done it all in like just by starting on one little thing, by chipping away at one thing, which is making sure that people check in at the right time. And it's like that then becomes a competitive advantage, not just because your costs are lower, but when you go to sell to the next company, the next community or whatever, your technology becomes part of your pitch. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, like, we are the best company to choose because we will give your property managers this dashboard, like we'll automate out your violation reporting or whatever it is. So, and that's the thing that is going to let you win that next job and then do it more efficiently.
I think that's such an important point, competitive differentiation, because in a service company, it is so easy to get into the rush to the floor pricing competition where you're like, well, I guess I'll lower my prices and do it cheaper because
race to the bottom.
You perceive yourself as commoditized. If I mow lawns, I'm just mowing lawns. So I have to do it cheaper. But this is a way to build differentiation in the business, build a superior experience, build more value at the same price point. So now you're delivering more at the same, but you're doing it at scale because it's automated, right? So you're not incurring additional headcount or person cost, human capital to do it. And so it can be a really, really effective way to differentiate. Absolutely.
And there's a flip side to this. We've talked about this before, actually, a couple times, but your intellectual property that you build inside of your business increases the enterprise value of your company. And, a lot of these service firms out there, they grow very quickly. They become very successful, especially if the people are good at what they do. They understand the processes. They can leverage this technology to become more efficient. And you become a really interesting acquisition hire. Service businesses are incredibly attractive for roll-ups under private equity, right? This happens all the time. You're like, I'm going to go roll up 10 lawn care companies. I'm going to own the entire space. Or you do asphalt repair, fine. I'm going to buy every asphalt repair company. I saw somebody was like rolling up a PE firm rolling up companies that clean parking lots. Like they'll go clean like a grocery store parking lot. And they just roll up these small companies. And your enterprise value, if you have something that manages your team, remotely and allows you to be efficient in your organization, that will scale not just to like your organization, but to everything inside of a much larger group of companies like yours. And you can just go, and then it's like the first step to franchising almost.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like, I mean, if you think about those acquisitions, and getting your service company acquired, if you think about a PE company or roll up or somebody else purchasing your service company, think about like why would they buy you, right? One option is they want to tap into your market penetration. So you have 1,000 customers who they can cross sell on their things, so they'll buy you so they can get access to that network of customers, right? They might buy you because of the talent. The people inside the organization are very special and they can plug into the larger organization. But they also might buy you because of the processes and the things that you do and the intangible kind of internal algorithm of the service company that really differentiates and can make the larger company kind of explode in value. So as you build those things, to your point, yeah, you're building enterprise value that is more attractive at acquisition and positions you better to be acquired. And because if you can't compete on people and you can't compete on customers, you can compete and potentially be acquired on process.
And the other cool thing about, man, it sounds so nerdy to say the cool thing about process, but the cool thing about process and about technology when it comes to process management is it can be a way to enforce process, right? If you have a bunch of paper checklists or SOPs about how you do a certain job, it is depending on how qualified, like how meticulous your staff are, it might be easier for some people to follow those SOPs. But if they're still ephemeral, people are going to play jazz with them. But if you got like an app or a piece of software that you got to go and check this, and this is the next process you got to move to, and you can only do this before that, you can enforce your process through just the way the technology works.
Yep.
So,
which leads to error reduction and leads to systemization, which leads to better margins.
Yeah.
And
which leads
better margins lead to yachts.
Yeah. Yeah. Efficiency leads to yachts. Yachts lead to happiness. Happiness leads to bikini girls on your yacht. I don't know.
I think they lead to happiness.
Anyway, I'm just saying, like, if you're still running a company that's running on paperwork, paperwork is just a polite way of saying to somebody, hey, we'll get to your money later. So
yes, exactly.
Well, cheers, sir.
Cheers. So if you were going to give a challenge to a service company who's listening to this, or any company who's listening to this and says, man, this is interesting, what should I do on Monday with my team? What would you tell them to do?
I mean, I think that almost with every problem solving technique is, talking to your team is a very, very good start, and asking them, just because with this kind of work with service companies and what you can automate, the opportunities are almost limitless. So just asking, kind of throwing out a question like, what's the biggest pain in your ass here, guys, day to day? Like, that is not about the actual people doing the work, installing the thing, cleaning the thing, whatever it is. Not that. What is like the biggest pain in the ass around that? Is it about managing them? Is it about tracking their timesheets, etc.? Right? People will give 30 versions of what annoys them in their job. And then once you've got a list of the things that are annoying, then that's going to, like, you can prioritize that in what are going to be the biggest competitive advantages. Like, if we could solve this problem, if we could just make this problem go away, could we sell more or could we be more efficient? And if you build a matrix between sales versus efficiency, right? And you find what I would call the lowest hanging fruit, or the one that like fixes the most, that's what you start with. And you use that as your beachhead, right? That you build a little thing, a small experimental thing. You don't spend more than 20 grand or 30 grand or whatever, like fixing that one problem. And then if that works and you start to get used to this way of like building software or like automating your processes or whatever it's going to be, because you don't want to like you probably don't want to like bring in like a whole bunch of consultants and do a whole digital transformation in most service companies. If you're probably under 100 employees. Over 100 employees, maybe you can go and do big digital transformation. But start small, hit the things that have the highest amount of value in reducing the pain of your staff, and probably also, if they can, have the biggest crossover in terms of competitive advantage, and then start with that.
Love it. Love it. So go do that, y'all.
Go do
You're
that.
listening?
Yeah,
Go do
and
that.
call us. We can help.
That's right. We can also help you brainstorm these things for sure.
And if you have any ideas or any things you just want to brainstorm, throw them in the comments of this. We do this stuff all day, every day, and we really enjoy it. We actually send our developers out into the field with service companies because it builds empathy for what they do and allows them to actually see where they could be, like how they should engineer the software for the environment that it's in. And they love it. They'll go and carry trash, or like you give a developer a chainsaw, they're going to have the time of their life. Just trust me on this one.
No doubt. I have stood on the top of a tower in the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere, watching people pick up trash before. So yeah, I hear you. It's a great time. And yeah, it builds incredible empathy. Yeah.
Well, Justin, I hope you have a great weekend. We record these on Friday, by the way. So that's why this is the last thing we do on Friday.
Last thing we do. And then
I think this will be published like Monday or Tuesday, but you know. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Enjoy your weekend, sir. Always a great discussion, and we'll see you very soon.
Cheers, guys. Peace.